Good evening. Hi, Corinne. Hi, Mom. Happy Friday. Trying to fix my crookedness here on the screen. Let's see. Probably making it worse instead of better. And I'm going to give people a minute to log on here. Thank you for sharing, Corinne. I appreciate that. Okay, I see a couple more people are joining us, so I will go ahead and get started. Happy Facebook Friday, everyone. Today is Friday, October the 9th. I am Jennifer Helm, the Faithful Stamper. Thank you all for joining me this evening. Tonight we are going to make the Impossible card. This card was very intimidating, I thought, to look at the picture, but then when I watched a video to see how to make it, it's really not impossible after all. So a little prep work will make your life a lot easier with this card. So we will get started on this in just 1 minute. Just a reminder, since it is Friday, to like, comment, and share. I do a contest every week where I draw a winner from those that comment and those that share, and I give away a card that I have made the week before. This card is going out to Ellen Lawrence for commenting on last week's video. And then for sharing, Miss Corinne, this is coming to you. So congratulations and thank you so much for commenting and sharing on my videos. Hi Thelma, happy Friday. So there are the winners from last week, so don't forget to comment and share to be entered to win this week's drawing. And as I mentioned, we are going to be making the Impossible card. It does fold flat to mail, fits in a standard card size envelope, but it's just a little special something. I don't know if you can see very well on the video, but this portion of the card stands up by itself, so it's just a bit different from your traditional card, but still a lot of fun and not hard at all to make. It is not impossible, as the name alludes. So the first thing we are going to do tonight is we are going to make a template. This is not something I normally do for the cards, but it's going to make your life easier if you would like to make this in the future. So we're going to make a template out of a piece of cardstock. So to start, you're going to need your Whisper White piece that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And this is a template that you're going to make to keep on hand for when you want to do the card later on. And you can craft along with me, or you may want to take notes. You may want to come back and watch either the replay here on the Facebook page or catch it on YouTube after I post the video. It will go up on my YouTube channel, which is Faithfully Stampin' with Jennifer Helm. I should write that down so I don't forget it. So, for the templates, I'm using, pardon me, cheap cardstock. I'm not using my Stampin' Up! Cardstock because that's gold, right, ladies? So this is just a flimsier piece of cardstock, and I'm going to use a couple other pieces in a minute here that I used bright colors so that you ladies can see what I'm doing, but also I did want to use my good stuff. So just a little tip there, but we'll go ahead and get started on our template. So the first thing you are going to do, if you have our Stampin' Trimmer, this will be a lifesaver for you. It'll just make things a little easier, but if you don't have this, don't worry. All you need is a cutter, a pencil, and a ruler, and a pair of scissors would probably make it easier. So either way works. Don't fret if you don't have our trimmer. So the first thing you're going to do with your piece of Whisper White is to turn it so the 4 1/4 side is at the top. And you're going to score at 2 1/8, so right down the center. And then you're going to turn it sideways, and this is where the trimmer comes in handy. If you don't have the trimmer, all you need to do is make notes about where the score line is, and you can make that with a pencil, and then you'll cut on the line later. But on the 5.5-inch side, the first thing we're going to do is cut at 2 3/4 from the top of the paper down to the score line. So don't go all the way across. I'm actually going to start at the bottom and just go up to the score line since I've got my paper in place at 2 3/4. And what is really handy, I'm not sure if this is going to come across well on camera, but our blades have markings on them. They have hash marks, I'll call them, on the vertical and the horizontal of your blade. So you can look right at your blade and see where the score line is and match your blade right up to it, and that's how you know where to stop. It really helps if you're kind of right on top of it. If you're looking at an angle, you might go a little too far. So just be careful. But there you can see I've gone right up to the score line. So this trimmer is really handy for something like this. So now I've got that cut line at 2 3/4 from the base to the center score line. Now I'm going to turn the card over, rotate it, and I'm going to cut at 1 inch from either end on the bottom. So not where that cut line is, but at the bottom. Same thing, I'm just gonna go up to the score line using my blade, and then I'm gonna turn it around and do the same thing. I could flip it over, but I prefer my cut marks to be on the same side. So I've measured it at the 1 inch mark here, and I'm just gonna cut down with my blade. And there is your template. And while we're cutting here, I'm going to go ahead and cut our other templates as well, and then we'll put our board aside. So I said you needed 2 pieces of cardstock for your templates. The first one is going to be your piece that is 4 1/8 by 2 5/8. I called this layer A, and once you cut it, you can make notes on it. And you can keep it forever, and that way you will know what you're doing. Hi Kathy, thanks for joining me. So for this template, template A, on the 2 5/8 inches side, so your narrow side, you want to score it at 7/8 of an inch. But we're not going to, actually, yes, we are going to score it. I'm getting ahead of myself here. On your template, what you're going to do, score at 7/8 of an inch. Score it, don't cut it, all the way down. Rotate it so your narrow panel is at the top. Hi Melody, happy Friday. And on the long side, the 4 1/8 inch side, you're going to score it at 2 inches. And so you'll see you're going to have 4 panels here. These 2 larger ones, 2 smaller ones. And you can use your cutter for this or your scissors. You're going to cut off this top block, so your top right block. So just a quick trim, or like I said, you can go back over it with your trimmer. But you're basically going to want an L-shaped template. And what I did with mine was I made some notations on it. They're not going to come across very well on camera because I used black ink. But I notated that this was 7/8 of an inch across. I wrote A and the bottom so that I remember what layer I was looking at. And I marked that the whole thing was 4 1/8, but my score line was at 2 inches. So set that aside for a minute and take your smaller piece of cardstock. This one is 2 1/2 by 4, and we're going to repeat the same thing we just did with the blue template, just with slightly different measurements. So on that 2.5 inch side, you're going to score all the way down at 3.75 of an inch. So all the way down, scoring 3/4 of an inch. Turn, and on that 4 inch side, you are going to score at 1 7/8. So I'm going to move my trimmer out of the way. Same as before, I'm going to take out this top corner. And then I have 2 templates that look like oversized L's. And I did the same thing. I've lost my other template. Hiding under my note paper. I made notes on this one too, so that when I'm done, I have pieces that I can keep together for future reference. And these are the handiest things you'll need for future reference, trust me. So I notated that it was 3/4 of an inch across, that it was what I called layer B, or the top. And I put a note on here, which you may want to do, that cut 2 with your DSP facing up. And we'll talk in a little bit about orientation with your DSP, but that might be a note you want to put on there. And then I put my score, or my notation for the score line, at 1 7/8. So keep these handy. And so then you have your Whisper White template. You might want to put Impossible card template on here, and then you can keep this all together in an envelope or paper clip it or something. So to make your Impossible card, it really isn't impossible. All you have to do, and I find this the easiest, put the template down so your 2 panels are on the bottom, your 3 are at the top. Take the center template and fold it towards you on that score line. That's your piece that's going to pop up. And then all you're going to do is flip one side or the other. I tend to always flip the right side. Didn't try it the other way, to be honest. This is your card. This is how your template works. And then these 2 templates that you just made show you the sizing that you need so that you can layer another layer of cardstock and a layer of designer series paper. And it's handy because these templates work on both sides, because they're the same size on both sides. So hopefully you're following along. I haven't confused you too much. So now we will go ahead and make a card together. And I'll give you some more tips and show you a neat way that you can make an extra card. So for my card, I used Bumblebee for my base. I went ahead and cut this one so that you would see, well, you wouldn't have to see me do that again, but I will cut the templates again. So, as I just did with the template, for my designer series paper, my cardstock, I folded up the stand-up panel, and I'm just flipping back that other panel. And so I know this is what I've got to work with. So now, you can do one of 2 things. I'm going to move my base out of the way there, so there's less to confuse you. You will have 2 pieces of designer series paper and 2 pieces of cardstock. Hi Jody, happy Friday. Now, something to think about. I'll bring this back over for just a second so you can see. So I've got my base, I've got a layer of Coastal Cabana, and I've got my DSP. If you want to keep it simple, you have 2 options with your templates. You could just cut your designer series paper from the bottom template, your template A, and just put that on the card. If you want to get a little fancier, layer them both. And if you want a little bit more of the bottom color, your card base to show, just cut one of the B layers to put on. So you have possibilities here to mix and match, and I'll show you that a little bit with the samples. But for this card, I'm going to do both so you can see how this goes together. Now, with your pieces that are going to be layered on the card, I said you had a couple options. Since you have your templates, one thing you can do is layer your template right on top. If you can hold it steady, you can just trim right there. And if you don't have a trimmer, like I was using my Stampin' Trimmer, and you had to use a ruler and scissors and a pencil, don't forget to go back and erase your pencil lines. I should have mentioned that earlier when I was cutting. But it's up to you how you want to cut these particular pieces out. So I'm going to move these over. I'm going to bring back in my trimmer, because what I found, I have to think just a smidgen, but I was using the same trick I employed earlier. So I've got my cheat sheet template. So I know I need to turn this sideways, and I made that score line at 2 inches. Hi Caitlin, happy Friday. Thanks for joining me. Don't worry about being late. Make sure you go back and catch the beginning of the replay because I made the templates already. So you might be a little confused from here on out, but I think you'll get the gist of it. Now, when you're making the piece to actually put on your card, you don't have to do the scoring because you're not really going to want the score marks like are on your template. This is just to give you your cutting pattern, basically. So, and now I'm probably confusing you all over the place. But I've got this at 2. But instead of scoring it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my blade and I want to go up to 7/8 of an inch. Now, I'm going to be very careful about this because I don't want to go too far. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to about an inch, maybe a little bit more. And I'm going to take it out and turn it. And this one is at 7/8 of an inch. So now I'm going to push my blade all the way up to the top, hold my paper down, and I can see this cut mark here on the side. So I'm going to bring my blade down to that mark. And look at that, came right apart. You have to be a little careful. I'm not going to worry too much about this cut line. It's actually going to be covered by the Designer Series paper for the most part, so I'm not going to nitpick. Keep this handy. Not for this card, but I'm going to show you how to make another card. You repeat the same thing. So, 2 inches on this one. And I'm going to cut up to 7/8 of an inch. And if my cuts aren't perfectly clean, let me see, the last one just fell right off there, you saw. But if I get close enough, what I'll do is just take my scissors and trim it. This is working better on camera than all the ones I made earlier today. That's not a bad thing. Usually things don't cooperate. All right, so now the DSP. Designer Series paper, if you're not familiar with the lingo. And keep that other template handy. This is layer B, or the top. And if you have a directional paper, this is where you want to just pay attention. If it's an all-over pattern, kind of like this one, it doesn't really matter which way the paper goes. But if you have a directional pattern, for example, I'm going to show you a Halloween card in a little bit that had pumpkins on it. And I wanted my pumpkins to all be facing the same way. So I had to be careful when I cut this L shape to cut the paper differently so I didn't have the pumpkins right side up and upside down. So just take a quick look at that before you cut any Designer Series paper that has a particular pattern to it. Okay, so this one, this is a little easier because it's 3/4 of an inch, and that's a little bit easier to see on my scorer. I like 1/4 of an inches rather than those 1/8 of an inches, but it works. So on the 4-inch side, the mark is going to be 1 7/8 of an inch. And I want to cut up to 3/4 of an inch. And so again, I'm going to be careful. I'm going to cut up, I'll cut up to the inch mark, and that way I can show you what I meant about the scissors. And now 3/4 of an inch this way, and I'm going to cut down to that score line. And again, you could just do this with a ruler or hold the template right to it. But you can see here this piece is hanging on just a little bit. I'm just going to take my scissors and I can tell right where I need to trim it off. And again, don't pitch these little pieces of DSP. Hold on to them. I'll show you a cute little card you can make. So there's one, and I'm going to repeat the same thing. And again, if there's any place you need to watch your DSP, it's right here. So 1 7/8. I'm going to cut up. If you had a light colored paper, you really don't have trouble seeing through the track here. It's because I've got this busy paper that I can't quite see what I'm doing. But it's okay because I can make it work. And again, just need a quick little trim. And there we go. So let me move my trimmer back out of the way and we will start assembling the cards. I'm done with my template now, so I can put that to the side. And I need my base and I've got my 2 cardstock layers and I've got my 2 DSP layers. And I forgot to get out my adhesive, but that's okay. And let me grab some dimensionals too. So right now we're just going to layer. You take your, if it's easier, if it helps you visually to do this, I usually do this because otherwise I'm liable to glue something the wrong way. I just lay the pieces, moving things all over the place this evening. I lay them on so I know where they go. So I'm going to take my adhesive. I'm using my Stampin' Seal. I had to laugh. If you were watching last week, my Stampin' Seal Plus was thrown, or my Stampin' Seal was throwing a fit on camera. Would you believe that little sucker worked perfectly all week long off camera? Did not want to cooperate last week, but boy did it behave this week. So I guess it really is just camera shy. So I'm just going to layer my cardstock and repeat. And you can use glue for these. They might need a little bit more time to set, but you can definitely use your adhesive of choice. Hi Maureen, happy Friday. Thanks for tuning in. For you ladies that are new, thank you for joining me, and you can go back and catch the replay to watch from the beginning here on the Facebook page shortly after I finish tonight. And then I will also be posting this on my YouTube channel, and I would love to have some more followers on my YouTube channel. So I'm just going to keep putting my adhesive on here. And repeat with the DSP. So once you get these templates made and you kind of have a feel for what you're doing, you can really roll right through these. So as I said, this impossible card is not as impossible as it might appear to be. I always think that's so funny. I see these card ideas and I think, oh no, I can't make that. It looks too hard. And then 3 years down the road, I'll finally watch a video on it and go, I can't believe I didn't try that before. Pardon me a moment, I'm having some technical issues with my background paper. Okay, so there we go. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, I want to make this a little sturdier. You could just send the card like this, but it has a little give to it, and I wouldn't want it to rip. So I'm going to take a strip of cardstock, And hopefully I remembered to put this on the supply list. If you are new to the page and the video, I did post a supply list earlier this morning with a picture of the card, so you can check that out so you see what you need. But this is 3/4 of an inch by 5.5. And it's just going to fit nicely on the front of the card. You can position it wherever you want. I recommend sort of in the middle, maybe a little towards the bottom. And you don't want to put adhesive on the whole thing. You just are going to want to put a little bit on the right end because you're attaching it to the skinny strip, and then some more on the left end. And I love the Stampin' Seal Plus. It's nice and sticky for your more three-dimensional items. So I always tend to attach the left side first, right along the edge, and then I try to just straighten the card out, make sure it's not crooked. The grid lines on my paper here help. Match up the other side, give it a little press, and now the card just has more sturdiness to it. Now, depending on what you use, you can stamp right here before you attach it to the card, but I'll show you a little sample in a little bit here, so you'll see what I mean. But you can just leave it plain. I'm going to embellish it a little bit, so we'll get to that in a second. So the next things you are going to need are a piece of Whisper White. This is what you're going to stamp your sentiment on. And let me flip here to give you the right measurements. Your Whisper White is going to be 1 7/8 inches tall by 3 1/4 inches wide. And then your color cardstock is going to be 2 inches tall by 3 3/8 inches wide. And so that's just going to layer nicely together. And when we're ready, I'm just going to glue the whole thing right here. This is your stand-up panel. Now, something to think about, depending on who you're sending this to, and how much you want to do to the card and write on the card. If you want to write a message on this back panel, all you need to do is cut a secondary piece of Whisper White. You can stamp it a little bit if you want, but then you've got a little space to do your writing. And I recommend doing your writing and stamping before you glue it on the card. It'll just make your life a little bit easier. So something to keep in mind there. It's totally up to you. So we are going to stamp a little here on the card. I am using the Daisy Lane stamp set. I just decided this coordinated with the Designer Series paper I wanted to use tonight. So I broke out a couple images from that. And I'm going to bring my ink over. I've got Bumblebee, Coastal Cabana, and Pear Pizzazz. So I think I'm going to start with my Pear Pizzazz. And I'm using just a couple different stamps. I've got the Smile, the Daisy I'll set to the side for a minute because I'm going to use that elsewhere, and the little Fern stamp. So what I'm going to do, all right, you ladies are going to be proud of me, I'm going to mess up my grid paper tonight. I always say that I hate to do that. Since this is a red rubber stamp set, a cling stamp set, I don't need an extra cushion underneath. I've got a cushion built into the stamp. So I'm just going to tap, make sure I've got my ink nicely on the stamp. And I'm going to do big leaf there, and I'm going to put just a little bit on the corner here. And set that aside. And now I'm done with my Pear Pizzazz ink. I usually start with a sentiment, and I didn't do that. So you can build around your sentiment if you want. It's up to you. But I'm going to do that before I get busy here. So again, tap, tap, tap on your ink pad. Line it up. Smile. And then the last thing I'm going to do here is stamp the cute little, I guess they're daisies. So on this portion, I use the smaller flower. And you can do as much or as little stamping on here as you want. You'll see some variety in these samples I'm going to show you when we're done this one. So what I did was I just decided, I played around with this a little bit before I settled on my final design. Just going to stamp a couple times fill up some of the space. I didn't want too much white space. And there we go. Actually, I think I'm going to stamp off once and just fill in a little bit. Just kind of fills in a little behind that fern, that little ferny leaf. So there we go. And only one more thing of stamping. So since I'm here with my ink pad open, I'm just going to take my sentiment aside for a minute. And on the card, I decided to use the smaller of the daisies for this particular piece. So I'm going to take my Bumblebee ink and stamp on a scrap piece of Whisper White. And I decided I wanted a little different look. Nothing too fancy, but I just wanted to do a little something. So I pulled out a blender pen. And our blender pens are great because they do just what the title alludes to. They blend the ink. And you can use them again and again. But what I did was I took my blender pen and I just ran it over the leaves. And I don't know how well this is going to come across, but it kind of pulls the ink together a little bit. If you look at the difference between the one I just colored and the ones next to it, it just has a slightly different look. And so I'm not going crazy with these, but I just decided to very quickly go over the leaves. It just changes the look of the flower ever so slightly, and I like that for this card. Obviously, if you don't have a blender pen or you don't want to do this, you don't have to do it. But I wanted to. So, now on the supply list, and when you're done with your blender pen, all you need to do is run it on a scrap piece of paper on the edge of your cardstock until it runs clear. And then you can use it again with a different color ink. But make sure it runs clear first. So, I mentioned in the supply list to bring punches or die cuts that were about 1 1/4 inches to 1.5 inches. Because when you're putting this card together, you don't have to put anything here in the center. You could just leave it like this. But I thought it might be nice to just dress up the space a little bit. But you're limited in size. So let me quickly put this together here. So this is my stamped sentiment piece you just saw me stamp. And it is completely up to you. You can glue this flat on the card front, this little stand-up panel, or you can pop it with dimensionals. So I decided to pop it with dimensionals. It's totally up to you. So I'm gonna quick pop this on here. And you could very easily skip the secondary layer, the layer that I have here that's Coastal Cabana. I could have skipped that and just put my sentiment piece right on that bumblebee, but I decided not to. So here's the two cards. This one is my completed card from earlier. And you can see where you might just want to put a little embellishment here. You don't have to, but you can if you want. Hi, Sue. Happy Friday. So, I mentioned the size of those punches. The punches I'm going to use are a little bit bigger, and they're almost bigger than I wanted. But if I used a smaller punch, I would have cut my daisy off, and I really wanted to use the daisy. So for this one, do as I say, don't do as I do. This punch is 1 3/4 inches, and it just happened to be the perfect fit for this daisy. And then my larger piece here, my Coastal Cabana, is 2 inches. And I really recommend smaller. It'll just make your life a little bit easier. But as I said, this was what fit on this particular stamp. But I will show you in a minute why I thought the smaller was better. So I just layered that together. Now placement is up to you. You can pop it over here on the larger panel. You could favor more towards the right if you wanted, or what I'm going to do is glue it right in the middle. And because this is bigger, because this base piece here is 2 inches, I don't have a lot of room to play with. I do kind of have to keep it right dead center. because otherwise it's either going to hang off the bottom of the card and not fit in the envelope, or it's going to bump right up into my sentiment. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to pop this on dimensionals. I'm going to stick a couple dimensionals right here on that little crossbar. And voila. And then one last touch. I have some of our Playing with Patterns resin dots, and we happen to have this yellow color. I'm not sure, I think that might actually officially be Daffodil Delight, but it's close enough to the bumblebee that I'm using it. So I'm just going to take a couple of the smaller ones. I did not bring my take your pick tool, but I'm going to put one on one side and let's see, two on the other. If you want to get technical, get a ruler, make sure they're even, but I think mine are close enough. So there we go. There is our impossible card. Did you ladies think that was impossible? I was pleasantly surprised with how easy that was. Really, once you make that template and you kind of get your head wrapped around how the card is going to come together, it's easy peasy. As my son likes to say, easy peasy lemon squeezy. He's 6. So there you have it. Now, before I show you the samples, I wanted to tell you, I mentioned earlier, when you're cutting your pieces that go here on the front of the card, your little L's, you're going to be left with 2 cardstock pieces and 2 designer series paper pieces if you are using those 2 layers on your card. I hate to throw away anything. It's probably why I've got a couple of bins full of random sized designer series paper. And I vow that one day it will all be used up because I just can't bear to throw it away. So I decided while these were sitting on my table, I'm like, you know, I can't throw that away. I've got to do something with it, right? So enter a very simple, very sweet little card. So to do this, these pieces are, I believe they're about 2 inches. Let me bring over my ruler here. I didn't measure them out. Let's see, they're between 2 and 2 1/8, depends on how accurate you're cutting, and 1 3/4, I think. My ruler might be a little off. It's an old ruler. But anyway, they should all be the same size, and if they're not, just trim something up. So what I did was, pardon me, and I'm collecting all my pieces. I took a card base in my bumblebee, and then I took a piece of paper that was, let me look at my cheat sheet here, 4.5 inches tall by 3 7/8 wide. In case you're taking notes, I'll repeat that. It was 4.5 inches tall by 3 7/8 inches wide. And all I did was take my little squares here and stagger them. So you could even, if you wanted, just leave it like that and use your designer series paper. But I'm going to use all 4 pieces. And you can have a lot of fun. You could make your totally different layout using your little scraps. But if you're like me, you probably don't want to throw those away. And then what I meant to do first is I'm going to take that fern stamp that I used on my Impossible card, and I'm going to stamp it on the Coastal Cabana squares in matching ink, just to kind of give those little plain squares a little something. So I did forget to do that on my sample, but you get the idea. And then all I did was I punched 2 of our large daisies, which coordinate with that daisy lane set. And then I punched a 1/2 inch circle out of the bumblebee to use for the center. Used a dimensional to put that on the card and added a couple little gems. And there's a perfectly simple card that I can use for any occasion. So that's your little bonus surprise for this evening, is a way to use up those little scraps. And now what I know you're all waiting for is, and then all you need is an insert, stamp the inside, and you're ready to go. And don't forget to stamp your envelopes while you're making these. So here are a couple more samples to show you just how the cards look in different designs. These are 2 Christmas cards that I did. So you can see the different paper, and you can see I didn't do crazy stamping here. I used, I think it's our Warm Hugs stamp set. I added a bow on this one. You can add a bow if you like. You can add some bling. And then I just used a couple of die cuts. And you can see why the smaller size is better. At least I think it's better. Be adventurous if you want. But you can just see the difference in the larger punch and why I was pushing the envelope here with getting it to fit. And the smaller one, you have a little bit more room to play. So there are the 2 Christmas samples that I did. And then, I know I was thinking ahead for Christmas, but I'm in love with our fall paper. And so I made some thank you cards. And I love this paper. I love these colors. And so you can see I played with the placement on the little accent piece. You can put it in the center of the bar, in your little cutout, or you can put it in front of your larger panel there. And then I just used the braided linen trim that we have. And what I did is I put a straight piece of the trim around behind the Very Vanilla and popped it with dimensionals, and then I tied a bow and put that on with a glue dot. So there you have that. And then I don't normally do this, but I wanted to make a couple Halloween cards. And so I ran out of time. I didn't quite get them all finished, but I dug out some retired Designer Series paper and some old Paper Pumpkin stamp sets. If you have not heard of Paper Pumpkin, that is our monthly subscription kit. Oh, I hope my phone isn't doing something funny. I'm almost done, bear with me. But I dug out these old Halloween DSP and Paper Pumpkin sets and use those. And I wanted to show you, this was what I was talking about earlier, where you can actually stamp right on the strip. I added a secondary strip. So on these cards, I mentioned it was 3 1/4 by 5 1/2. So the black layer underneath here is 3 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then this is 1/2 inch by 5 1/2, and I stamped right on it. So I just thought these were cute. And I had a couple others that I didn't quite get finished, so I have to finish those and post the pictures later. Melody, I will answer your question when I am done the video. I've got a weird pop-up window right in the middle, so I can't read hardly anything on my screen, so I apologize, but I will answer that in just a minute. So there you have it, ladies. I hope you enjoyed making the Impossible card. I will be back Monday evening with a Mystery Monday card where I will post a supply list on Monday morning, but I will not share a picture of what project we are going to make until we go live here at 8:30 p.m. on Monday evening. And then I'll be back next week for Facebook Friday. I don't remember what kind of card I'm going to make. I forgot to look ahead. But thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget, there is a Designer Series paper sale going on this month. We have 15 packs of Designer Series paper that are 15% off. And if you need Designer Series paper or any other supplies, be sure to visit my website. And if you use that October host code, you will be entered to win a Simply Chamois, which is a great way to clean your stamps. That is what I'm giving away this month. So anybody who orders using that host code will be entered into a drawing to win that. So if you have any questions, please feel free to message me. If you attempt the Impossible card, please share pictures of your beautiful projects on my Facebook page or in the comments of this video. We love to see what everyone is making, and I love seeing the camaraderie and the support and everything when you guys share your creativity. I was laughing. Some of the posts that came up in the last week got lots and lots of love, and I really, really love that. So that was just great. So anyway, ladies, thank you so much for taking time out of your Friday night to craft with me. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe and happy crafting.